minute. I will see if it's working with you. So Sandy also with you today?
Yeah.
Are you shomaring and stuff?
Good morning, Sandy. Shabbat shalom. Hag Sameach.
I talked to somebody yesterday who, the end of his education career, but he said there's 30. Because you're trying end of the year, he goes, I have 37 more days. Is that what you have?
Is that person in Piedmont High School?
No, but I said that most of you are.
June 1st is when we get out. You're having fun at the dates. We have all of May. I guess.
Yeah, it's great actor.
In 6 weeks. Yeah. We have not done that.
All right, friends. Shabbat shalom and Chag Sameach. Happy Passover. We are going to go ahead and begin. We're using this book today, which is not the book we normally use, but because it has the holiday stuff in it. And so we'll begin on page 10. Please rise. Morning blessings. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, asher natan l'tzvi ben yom ben laila. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, shesani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, shesani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, shesani ben Chorim. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, pokech ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, abi sharamim. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, atir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, zokif kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, bakarat alamayim. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, shesali kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, amechim tzadik gaver. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, ozer Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai l'mechalam, and ten le'ayef koach. Now we may be seated, but instead of going to our customary Psalm 150, we're going to, for a special treat today, we're going to go to page 72, because we were just talking about this last night at our Passover Seder. This passage appears in our Passover Seder as part of the Great Hallel, which is the Hallel Plus. And anyway, so we're going to do the first and last stanzas of it in silence in between. And basically, your part is Ki Le'olam Chasdem. And it's very Dayenu-ish if you read this. It doesn't say the words Dayenu, but it's it's all the things that God did for us. Odil Adonai ki tov, Odil Elohim, Odil Adonai Adonim, Lo Seineflot Gedolot Levado, Ki Le'olam Chasdo. Nochen lechem l'chol basar, ki le'olam chasdo, odu le'el hashamayim, ki le'olam chasdo. And now to 88. Don't remember all the page numbers anymore in this. Hallelujah. No, sorry, wrong tune now. Hallelujah, 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 Bekocho. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Birki Ahuzo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Bikurotav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Kero Gulo. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Betega Shofar. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Benevel Vechinor. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Betov Umacho. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Beminim Behugav. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Betziltzalei Shema. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Betziltzalei Teruah. Kol Shema Tehallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Kol Shema Tehallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We now turn to Shacharit. It's on page 96, and for those who are watching online, if you only have our regular Siddur, we're on page 149. So Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom, Yadira, and Pastor Karen. Maybe more, but I happen to know they were on waiting when I turned it on. So anyway, and before I forget, happy and spiritual Easter to you, Pastor Karen. So actually, what did I say? But it's really 90. So I'm wrong. It's 3:34 here. 3:34. Because the weekday Shacharit follows that psuke in this book, etc. Like I said, forgetting pages. So 334, but it's still 149 if you have the brown book at home. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha. From Egypt you redeemed us, from the house of bondage you delivered us. All these themes of the Seder of the Exodus are throughout the regular Shabbat service too. ולכן שמחך, נפרחן נברך את שם קודשך, כמו נביא ברכי נפשי על אדוני, וכל קרבי את שם קודשו. Now, on 336, I'm going to be using or attempting to use the Chag tune, the festival tune, rather than the Shabbat tune, because that's actually what you're supposed to do. Ha'el b'tatzimot uzecha, Hagedol b'kvot shemecha, Hagibor l'netzach v'nara b'norotecha, HaMelech, Hayoshev al kisei, Ram v'nisa, Shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo, V'chatur tzadikim Adonai, l'sharim nevatila, V'fi yesharim titralal, V'divrei tzadikim titparach, ובשום חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ומקלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. שכן חובת קודשים לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, להודות הלל לשבח, ולרומם להדר, לברך ללל קלס, all called divrei shirot v'tishbachot, David ben Yisha abdecha meshichecha, yishtabach shimcha le'ad malkeinu, hayal ha'melech hagedol v'kadosh b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, yibachana Adonai Eloheinu, ve'avotenu shir shvacha le'el v'zimra, uzu memshala netzach kedula u'gvura, tehila v'tiferet kedusha u'malchut, brachot v'hodot meta be'ad olam, Baruch atah Adonai, El melech gadol b'tishbachot, El ador niflo b'abachir b'shirei zimra melech elchei ha'olamim. Yikra v'yitkadosh shemei Rabbah, V'yamad yivrach cherutei v'yamnech malchutei, V'chayachonu v'yamechon v'chayachon beit Yisrael, V'galav izman kariv imeru, Amen. Yehesh me'Rabbah mevorach, Le'olam lo me'omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitbar v'yimram v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei l'kudusha, Le'lam mikro b'chata v'shirata, Shushbechata v'nechemata, Tamiran be'alma v'imeru, Amen. Please rise for the Baruch Hu, page 340. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch le'olam va'ed. May be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotzor v'rei choshech oseh shalom u'borei et hakol. Hakol yoducha ve'hakol yishabchucha. Ve'hakol yomru ein kadosh ka'Adonai. Ein ke'erkecha ve'ein zulatecha, efes biltecha u'vidomela. Ein ke'erkecha ve'ein zulatecha, efes biltecha u'vidomela. Ein ke'erkecha Adonai Eloheinu be'olam hazeh, ve'ein zulatecha l'malkin chayei olam haba. Efes biltecha b'aleinu nimon HaMashiach. In Domelech HaMoshin L'Tfiat HaBeitim El Adon HaKol HaMasim Baruch U'Barach Befi Kol Neshama Kolo V'Tuvo Maleh Olam Da'at Uduna Sovevivoto Amigael Achayot HaKodesh V'Nenar B'Chavod Al Chaver Kava Zechut U'Mishor Mipnei Chisro Chesed V'Rachamim Lifnei Kevodo Tovim Me'orot Shebara Eloheinu Yitzhara V'Da'at V'Bina U'Paskel Koach U'Gvura Natan Bahem Moshlim B'Kerev Tevel Maleim zivum fikim noga na'ezivam bechol ha'olam semechim betzetam zim bevoam Maritzon konam per bechavod notnim lishvot zolaverina lezecher malchuto kara לשמש ויזרח אורה והקים צורת הלבנה שבח נותנים לו כל צבא מרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים וכוכבים וחיות הקודש ולאשר שבת מכל המעשים Come on, 344. Tiparak Tzureinu Malkeinu V'Goaleinu Borei Kedoshim Yishtabach Shimcha Le'ad Malkeinu V'chulam Pulchim Et Pi'em B'Tushav Torah B'Shira V'Zimra Mevarchim V'Shabchim Farim V'Maritzim V'Makdishim U'Mamlichim Et Shema El HaMelech HaGadol HaGbor VeHaNorah Kadosh Hu וכולם מקבלים להם ומלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקריב לרצונם בנחת רוח ושורה ורע בנימה קדושה כולם כאחד עולים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות הארץ כבודו באופן הקדוש פרש גדול מן הסים והצורפים ואתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני במקומו לא ברוך ליבו ייתנו אור חדש על ציון תאיר, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו, מהרה לאורו, ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. אבא רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותורה, חמת עלינו, אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבטנו בך, אבינו מלכנו, ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו למדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו. ותן בלבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע וללמוד וללמד לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה והאר עינינו בתורתך ודבק לבנו במצוותיך ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וירא את שמך ולא נבוש לעולם ועד ולא נבוש לעולם ועד כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ תוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע ואמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך Adonai. Abochem Emo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha b'chol meodecha ve'hayu admarim ha'eleh asher anochi metzavecha ayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'am v'shivtecha b'beitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha Ukshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafo beinenecha, uktatam al mezuzot beitecha, u'bisharecha. We continue silently, 348, and we're using Sim Shalom. Hopefully you grab it on your way in. No, I think I see them in your hand now. That's L'mahan tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai item kiroshim lechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet Adonai Elohechem emet V'dor v'dor kayam u'shmo kayam v'chisonacham v'choto v'emato liad kayamet v'varav chayim v'kayamim. Emet she'atadonai Eloheinu v'le'avotenu malkeinu v'chavotenu v'le'nu v'lavotenu yotzenu tzuriyishuatenu v'neinu matzalim elam shemecha in Elohim zulatecha ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam. Moshe b'nei Yisrael chaneshira b'simcha rabah ve'amru kulam mi chabocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh norat hilot osei feleh Shira chadasha, shibchu gehulim, leshimcha al sfat hayam yachad kulam, hodu v'himlichu ve'amru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. To Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, uvdechinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael, Golenu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kiddush Yisrael, Baruch Adonai, Kol Yisrael. Right, we do the Amidah for festival morning, not Shabbat morning, so we're going to do that silently first, page 366, and you add anything where it says on Pesach or anything in parentheses for Shabbat. going to repeat the Amidah back on page 366. Adonai sifatai tiftahu fi yagi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Umevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer Umoshiach Umagen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ufokei Tzara Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Eitim Atarav Lehoshia Mashiva Ruach Umorid Haga Hashem Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechayim Eitim Berachamim Rabim Tzomech Nochlim Berofeh Olim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micham Lo Chabal Givuro Umedo Melach Melech Meimi Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua Reman Atah Lechayot Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayeh HaMeitim. Please rise for Kedusha. Nekadesh Shechah B'Elam K'Sheshem Hakishim Oto B'Shmei Maron K'Katuv Hayad Neviyecha V'Kara Zeh Zeh V'Amar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot L'Chol Haaretz Yevodo Az B'Kol Ra'ash Gadol Adif Chazak Mashvim Kol Minasim Nimatzrafim Nimatam Baruch Yom Beru Baruch Yevod Adonai Mim Kol במקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועת תשכון תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך לדור ודור לדור ודור לנצח נצחים ואיננו תירנה מלכותך כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקך ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הדור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש עלינו בגנולנו שלום ועד כמלך קרוב וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני אל הקדוש. May be seated. We're on 370. אתה וחתנו מכל העמים אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות וקידשתנו מצוותיך וקירבתנו מלכנו לעבודותיך בשמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת אתה בחרתנו מכל העמים אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות וקידשתנו במצוותיך וקירבתנו מלכנו לעבודותיך בשמך הגדול והקדוש עלינו קראת אתה v'bachartanu, ata v'bachartanu mikol ha'amim. V'titzin l'Adonai Eloheinu b'ava Shabbatot v'nucha v'adim l'simcha haginu maznim v'sason et yom ha'Shabbat hazeh v'et yom ha'kamatzot hazeh zman cherutenu b'ava mikras kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim Eloheinu ve'avotenu ya'aleh ve'yavo v'yagiv v'yartzeh v'yishama v'yipaked v'yisacher zichronenu u'v'yikdolnenu v'zichron avotenu v'zichron Mashiach ben David avdecha v'zichron Yerushalayim ir kodshecha v'zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha l'pleita l'tova v'chen chesed rachamim v'chaim u'shalom b'yom ha'kamatzot hazeh Zochrenu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova v'chenu bo livracha v'oshienu bo l'chayim Udivar Yeshua Rachamim Chus V'chanenu Rachem Aleinu V'oshienu Ki Elecha Einenu Ki Amelech Chanun V'rachum Ata V'asienu Adonai Eloheinu Et Birkat Moadecha Lechim U'Shalom L'simcha U'Sason Kasher Atzita V'Marta Levarchenu Eloheinu V'Avotenu Retzevim Nuchatenu Kachin Mitzvotech V'Tenkaven V'Doratecha Tzavenu Mituvecha V'Simchenu V'Yeshuatecha V'tar Lebeinu Le'ovdecha Be'emet V'chalenu Eloheinu B'avav Ratzon V'simcha V'sason Shabbat U'Moadei Kodshecha Yismechu V'cha Yisrael Mekadesh Shemecha Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat B'Yisrael V'Hazmanim V'tzir Adonai Eloheinu B'Yam Yisrael U'V'Tfilatam V'Shevet Avodah L'Nivir Beitecha V'Tfilatam B'Avat V'Tfilatam Ratzon V'Tfilatam Tamin Avodah Yisrael Amecha V'Techazenu B'Shuvcha Tzion B'Rachamim Baruch Atah Adonai Amachazir Shchinato L'Tzion L'Odim Anachnu Lach Adonai Eloheinu V'Avotenu Kulam Yiprak Ram Shimcha Maken Tamid Le'olam Va'ed V'Midu Chasela V'Lut Shimcha Be'emet Ha'Eshu Etenu V'Eshtenu Sela Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'Tov Shimcha L'Chena Le'Hodo Eloheinu Ve'Avotenu Baruchenu B'Abraham L'Shuv L'Eshed B'Torah K'diva Al Yidei Moshe Avdecha Miram Mipi Aaron Uvanav Kohanim Am Kedushecha Ka'amor V'Rachanai V'Yishmarecha V'Yadonai Panav Elecha V'Yichunecha V'Sadonai Panav Elecha V'Yichzem Lecha Shalom Sim Shalom Ba'olam Tova V'Racha Chen V'Chesed Rachamim L'Nev Kol Yisrael Amecha B'Keinu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad V'Or Panecha K'V'Or Panecha Natata Lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torah Chaim V'Avacha Chesed Tzedakah V'Racha V'Rachamim V'Chaim V'Shalom V'Tov V'Necha L'Varech V'Amcha Yisrael B'Chol Edu B'Chol Shah B'Shlomecha Baruch Atah Adonai V'Rachat Mo Yisrael B'Shalom. Right, we continue now and with Hallel, which I think is just following this in this book. I think it's on page 380. Please rise. Our celebration psalms, which you did part of before the meal and part of after the meal. Or you skipped them, part of them before the meal, or you skipped part of them after the meal. All right. But you get them now, regardless. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Mechalam Asher Kachanu Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Likro Et HaHallel Hallelujah Hallelu Avdei Adonai Hallelu Et Shem Adonai Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach Me'ata Ve'ad Olam Mimizrach Shemesh Ad Nevo Mehula Shem Adonai Ramal Kol Goyim Adonai Al Hashamayim Kevodo Mikan Adonai Eloheinu Ad Magbihi Lashavet Ad Mashpili Lirod Bashamayim Uva'aretz Mekimi Me'afarda Me'ashkot Yarim Evyon Le'Hoshivim Nedivim Im Nedivei Amo Moshe v'yakeret habayit em avanim smecha Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim Beit Yaakov me'am loez Hayta Yehuda lekodsho Yisrael mamshelotav Hayam Bayanos Hayarden Yisov le'achor Ha'arim Rakedu Ha'edim Yimva'o Kivnei Tzon B'tzeit Yisrael miMitzrayim Beit Yaakov me'am loez Malecha Hayam Kitanus Hayarden Tisov le'achor Ha'arim Tirkedu Ha'edim Geva'or Kivnei Tzon Milifnei Adon Huli Aretz Milifnei Eloah Yaakov Ahofchit Atzur Agamayim Kalamish Lemainu Mayim Lolan Ranai Lolanu Ki Leshimcha Tenchavot Al Chastecha Al Amitecha Yisrael b'tach Adonai Ezram Maginamhu Beit Aharon B'itchuv Adonai Ezram Maginamhu Adonai B'itchuv Adonai Ezram Maginamhu Adonai Zecharanu Yivarech Yivarech et Beit Yisrael Yivarech et Beit Aharon Yivarech Yirei Adonai Haketani Mipagidulim Yosef Adonai Alechem Alechem ve'al Menechem Beruchim Atem Adonai Oseh Shamayim Ba'aretz Hashamayim Shamayim Adonai Ve'aretz Natan Libnei Adam Lo Avitim Hallelujah Ve'lo Kol Yordei Duma V'anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'ata ve'ad olam Me'ata ve'ad olam Hallelujah Ahavti ki yishma Adonai et koli tachanunai Ehalech Adonai be'artzot hachayim Emanti ki adaber ani aniti me'od Ani amarti v'chofsi Kol ha'adam kol zev Ma'ashiv Adonai kol zubli alai Nidarat Adonai Shalom Negana l'chol amo Bechatzrot Beit Adonai b'toch Yerushalayim Hallelujah, Hallelujah, et Adonai, Kol goyim, Shabduhu, Kol ha'amim, Ki gavar Aleinu, Chasdo, Ve'emet Adonai le'olam, Hallelujah. Hodu Adonai ki tov, Ki le'olam chasdo, Yomar na Yisrael, Ki le'olam chasdo, Yomru na Beit Aharon, Ki le'olam chasdo, Yomru na Yirei Adonai, Ki le'olam chasdo, Yai nai 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 nai, Yai nai 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 nai, Yai nai 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 nai, Yai nai 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 nai. Min ha'metzar karatia, anani v'merchavya. Min ha'metzar karatia, anani v'merchavya. Nani lo virama yasedi matam. Ozi וזמרניה Yeshua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah v'yili Yeshua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah v'yili Yeshua. Ozi v'zimrat Yah v'yili Yeshua. Korina v'shavon ha'tzadikim yamin Adonai osach hayil yamin Adonai romema yamin Adonai osach hayil v'amin echyev yasaper ma'aseyah yasor yisrani v'yah v'lamavet lo nitati Pichuli Sharei Tzedek Avovam Odeha. Pichuli Sharei Tzedek Avovam Odeha. Zeh Ashar LaAdonai Tzadikim Yavovo. Zeh Ashar Adonai Tzadikim Yavovo. Odeh Ki Anitani Batehi Lishua. Odeh Ki Anitani Batehi Lishua. Even Masu Abanim Vayeta Lerosh Bina. Even Masu Abanim Vayeta Lerosh Bina. Mein Adonai Haitazon Inifad B'Einenu. Mein Adonai Haitazon Inifad B'Einenu. Zeh Hayom Asa Adonai Nagila v'nismechavo. Zeh hayom asa Adonai Nagila v'nismechavo. Adonai Hoshiana. Adonai Hoshiana. Adonai Hatzlichana. Adonai Hatzlichana. Baba Shem Adonai Bracha B'Beit Adonai Bracha Baba Shem Adonai Bracha B'Beit Adonai El Adonai Meir Lanu Yisru Chag Bavotim Ad Kano HaMizbech. El Adonai Meir Lanu Yisru Chag Bavotim Ad Kano HaMizbech. Eliata Ve'odeka Elohai Aromimeka. Eliata Ve'odeka Elohai Aromimeka. Hodu Ladonai Ki Tov Ki Leolam Chasdov. Hodu Ladonai Ki Tov Ki Leolam Chasdov. Ki U'Maasecha Tzedekah. Ki Lecha Tov Leodot U'Shimcha Lezamer Ki Me'olam Ad Olam Ata El. Baruch atah Adonai Melech Me'olal V'Tishbacho. 392. Yikra v'yikra Shemei Rava. V'yamani Brachir Tev Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon V'yavchon Cherechon Beit Yisrael. V'galav Bizman Kari V'Imeru. V'hei Shmei Rava Mevorach. V'yolam Le'almei Almaya Yitbarach. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitbarach V'yamina Say Yitadar V'yitalev Yitala Shmei Kudsha. Lami Kobrachata V'Shiratat, Chata V'Nechamata Damiram B'Ima V'imeru. Tikabot Sov Don V'Odon Chosro Kanamavon Divishmaya V'imeru. Ishlam Rab Mitchemaya F'Nil V'Korshra V'imeru. Osei Shalom B'Imromav U'Ya'asei Shalom. Aleinu V'Al Koisra V'Korish V'Tevel V'imeru. You may be seated momentarily. And Karen, will you take, is the offer still stand for the Torah service? Okay. Karen is going to lead us in the Torah service, page 394. And, while she's starting that, I'll get the ark openers and all that stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach. אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום על הרחמים היטיבה ברצונך את ציון תבנה חומות ירושלים תבנה חומות ירושלים כי לך לבד בטחנו מלך אלרם וניצב אדון עולם אמן. ויהי בצור אהרון ויאמר משה קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך וינוסו משנאיך מפניך כי מציון תצא תורה כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני מירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה תורה ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו וינרחץ ולשני קדישה יקירה אנא אמר תושבחן יקירה קודמך ותפתח ליבי באורייך ותשליט משאלי דליבה דכל עמך ישראל לטוב חיים ולשלום אמן. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shema. Gadol Adonai iti unerom Shemo yachdav lecha.
And for guests, we're still not touching and kissing. So, but the Torah's coming out. But no touching and kissing.
Kol bashamayim u'ba'aretz, ki kol bashamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai ha'malaka ve'haminaseh lechol erosh. Romelu, Romelu, Romelu. Adonai Eloheinu, Vehishtachavu, Lehadam Rabbah Kadosh Hu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, Vehishtachavu, Lehar Kodesh, Ki Kadosh, Adonai Eloheinu.
All right, we may be seated. And we're going to turn in our 8-time Chumash to chapter 12, verse 21 of the book of Exodus, which I don't have the page for yet, but I'm about to get it. It's 385. And we take a break now from our Parshiot, and we go to the story of the Exodus for Passover. And this first Aliyah, chapter 12, verses 21 through 24, we're talking about the lamb's blood on the 2 doorposts, the very definition of passing over. So 12, 21 through 24, we call upon Ann Levine as the first Torah reader, and Jerry Levine, HaKohen, as the first Aliyah.
ויעזור ויגן יושיע לכל המשים בו ונאמר אמן. הכל הבו גדל אלוהינו תשומת כבוד לתורה, כהן קרא, יעמוד, יחיל בן שלום בן כהן. ברוך שנתן תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו, ואתם חיים עליהם חיים כולכם היום.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamborach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'chavanu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Vayikra Moshe Livnei L'kol Zivnei Yisrael Vayomer Aleichem Nishchu Uchru. Oh, I'm in the wrong line. Uchru Lachem Son Mishpechotechem V'shachatu hapasach U'chachtem agudat etzov U'tvachtem B'dam asher basar Vehigatem el hamashkaf Ve'el shatei hamezuzot Min hadam asher basar Ve'atem lo tetzu ish mipetach beto ad boker va'avar Adonai rofet Mitzrayim ve'ra'a et hadam al hamashkov Va'al shetei hamezuzot Ufasach Adonai al hapetach V'lo yiten hamashchit Lavo el betechem lingov Ushmartem et hadavar hazeh L'koch lecha ulvanecha ad olam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tachleinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasherah.
So the second Aliyah, chapter 12, verses 25 through 28. When your children ask you what you mean, tell them about the Passover story. And this is one of the questions of the four children, or the four sons, except that this is actually the question of the wicked son. And the answer isn't like in the Torah isn't the same as in the Gada. In the Gada, it's you blunt his teeth, you hit him in the mouth, and you tell him you're not including yourself amongst our people. But that's not what it says in the Torah. That it's an innocent question. That has nothing to do with exclusion or inclusion. But the Haggadah is making an interesting point about people who exclude or include themselves from the Jewish people. But it's just a pedagogic device in there. It's not what actually happens in the Torah. But anyway, you see the roots of that in this passage, chapter 12, verses 25 to 28, as we call upon Paul and Philo Raskin. Paul is a Levite.
Yamdu Pinchas Anhul ben Brucha Avrum Halevi Maya Bat Uri Rebbe. No.
So afraid of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not.
Okay.
You're above. Sarah Freda Bat Haskel Vahaika Shani.
Baruch hu et Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Baruch
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacharanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Lehaya kitavo'u el ha'aretz asher yiten Adonai lachem ka'asher diber ushmartem et ha'avodah hazot. Lehaya ki yomru alechem B'nechem ma ha'avodah hazot lachem v'amartem zevach pesachu l'Adonai asher pasach avatei v'nei Yisrael v'Mitzrayim Benopo et Mitzrayim v'et B'teinu Chitziel v'yikod ha'am v'yishtachavu v'yalchu v'yasu b'nei Yisrael ka'asher tziva Adonai et Moshe ve'Aharon kenasu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'sofenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We now are in the plague of the firstborn. The firstborns are dying. Chapter 12, verses 29 through 32. And for the third Aliyah, commemorating the yahrzeit of his beloved father, Reuben Glick will have the next Aliyah. Remembering Edward Bernard Glick, who I remember well.
Ya'ama Reuben ben Asher Dov V'Fredo Shlishi
here it is.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim. V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayhi b'chatzi halayla. Adonai yikachu bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. מבכור פרעה יושב הכיסאו עד בכור השביעי אשר בבית הבור וכל הבור בהמה וכל בכור בהמה ויקום פרעה לילה ובכל עבדיו במצרים ותהי צעקה גדולה במצרים כי אין בית אשר אין שם מת ויקרא למשה לאהרון לילה ויאמר קומו צאו מתוך עמי גם אתם גם בני ישראל ולכו עבדו את אדוני כדברכם גם צאנכם גם בקרכם קחו כאשר דיברתם בלכו וברכתם גם אותי.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
All right, the fourth Aliyah, verse 33 through 36, as they prepare for leaving Egypt. As Lara is going to read the Torah today, and we call upon Rebecca Glick, actual adult now, but former Bat Mitzvah student of ours here, including a Shacharit leader even, quite a very learned student.
Rivka Bat, Masha Ravine, Ravi'i.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah. Amen. V'techezak Mitzrayim ha'am Maher L'shalcham min ha'aretz Ki amru kulanu metim. Vaisah ha'am et betekot terem yechmat mish'artam tzurot b'simotam al shikman uvnei Israel asu kidvar Moshe vayshe'alu mimitzrayim klei kesef uklei zahav u'smalot v'Adonai natan et chen ha'am be'enei Mitzrayim v'yashilum v'yanatzlu et Mitzrayim. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah. Amen.
Susan should say the Shenakion.
Oh, first time?
Yeah. Okay. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'hegianu l'azman hazeh.
Wonderful reading, too.
Beautiful. Thank you.
You're fantastically done, and with alacrity. Yes, and with we appreciate it. And we're on the fifth Aliyah now, as the Israelites flee, and they don't have time to bake the bread, so you get the matzah. And we have David Goodwin, our president, reading Torah, and his daughter Sophie and Nicholas will be chanting the Aliyah.
Yandu. Naftali ben Yitzhak, Deborah bat David, Hamishi,
Baruch et Adonai Havarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Havarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayisu b'nei Yisrael me'ronsei Sukkotai כשש מאות אלף רבי הדברים ובעמיתיו וגם ערב רב על עמיתם וצאן ובקר מקנה כבד מאוד ויעפו את הבצע אשר הוציאו במצרים וגות מצות מבוך חמץ כי גרשו ממצרים ולא יכלו להתממע וגם צידה לא עשו להם מושב. בני ישראל אשר ישבו במצרים 30 שנה ו400 שנה. ויהי מקץ 30 שנה ו400 שנה. ויהי בעצם היום הזה יצאו כל צבאות אדוני מארץ מצרים להושיע ריבו לאדוני להוציאם מארץ מצרים והלילה הזה לאדוני שימורים לכל בני ישראל לדורותם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai naten haTorah.
Right, the sixth Aliyah, laws of Korban Pesach, and both the sixth and the seventh deal with these, and that includes the law that only those who are circumcised may eat of this particular sacrifice.
Ya'amod Shlomo ben Moshe v'Gital Shishi.
Baruch et Adonai Havarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'notan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. ויאמר אדוני אל משה ואהרון זאת חוקות הפסח כל בן בכר לא יאכל בו עבד איש מתנת כסף וכל עבד איש מתנת כסף ומותו אותו אז יאכל בו תושב השכיר לא יאכל בו ובית אחד יאכל לא תוציא מן הבית מן הבשר חוצה בעצם לא תשברו בו כל עדת ישראל יעשו אותו וכי יגור איתך גר ויאסף אסף לאדוני עמו לא חוזרך ואז קרב לעשותו וחיה כאזרח הארץ וכל ערל לא יאכל בו. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nota b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Right, the next Aliyah, we're on verse, I believe it's 47. Continuing with the laws of the Korban Pesach, call upon Lori David Rosenthal.
Ya'amdu Moshe ben Mordechai b'Sara v'Leah bat Zalman v'Fredola Shabi
David, but that's
Oh, yes, I see that now. Should I call it again? Okay. Ya'amdu David ben Leah v'Mordechai halevi v'Miriam bat Leah bat Zalman v'Fredola Shabi.
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein ha'Torah. Amen. Amen. Torah echad yechiyah v'ezrach v'der hagar b'tofechem v'yasuch v'bnei Yisrael v'asher tzivach Adonai et Moshe ve'et Aharon k'nasu v'yehi v'etzem hayom hazeh hotzi Adonai b'nei Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim al Tzavotam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai notein ha'Torah. Amen.
All right, we now please rise. The second scroll is brought to the table. Chatzi Kaddish is recited.
Yikara v'yikara shemei rabba ve'alma tibrachu te'vyam lichmalchute lecha yechoyo ruchaye lechol beit Yisrael Ubizman kari limaru Amen Yeishei Rabba Nevorach Le'olam ve'amaya Yisbarach Yisbarach ve'yishavach ve'yikar v'yitroma v'yinasei ve'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitaleh Shemei Kedusha
Rechu
La'ela Mikol Berchata V'Shirata
Dus Echata V'Net Echata Mihiran B'Yama Amen.
Remain standing for the Hagban Gula. We call upon Marty and Hilda for the lifting of this first extremely heavy Torah.
Ya'amud HaMakbiyah Ta'amud HaGolelet
Zot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Lifnei B'nei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai B'yad Moshe V'yitzchayim Nil Machazim Ha'vetam Ve'amerusham V'yitzchayim Nil Machazim Ha'vetam Ve'amerusham
be seated. We turn now to page 931. The additional offering to be brought on Passover is the second Torah reading from the book of Numbers, Parshat Pinchas, chapter 28, verse 16 on page 931. And we call upon our Bible. Okay, so you're doing the Maftir, the blessing, and the Torah reading, so he's doing it all. So it's all David right now.
Ya'alma, David ben Hanana, HaKohen, Hamaftir.
And he's president. Did he cook tonight?
Baruch Adonai Barach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
U'b'chodesh harishon Asar Yom Chodesh Pesach V'Eloi V'Chamisha Asar Yom V'Chodesh Hazeh Chag Shivat Yamim Matzot V'Yachel Yom Harishon Mipnei Kodesh Kol Melechet Avodah Lo Ta'asu V'Hikravtem Eishei Olal Adonai Parim B'nei Hakar Shnayim V'El Echad V'shiva kevasim b'nei shana t'nimim yehiyu lachem v'minchotam solet olav hashamen Osha esronim l'par v'shnei esronim v'ayil ta'asu Yisaron ta'aseh l'keves ha'echad v'shivat ha'kevasim v'se'ir chatad echad v'chaper alechem v'vadolat ha'boker sheleolat ha'tamid ta'asu et Eila ta'asu l'yom shivat yamim lechem yishireach nechuach l'Adonai alalat ha'tamid ye'aseh v'nizkor v'yom hashvi'i mikre kodesh yechiyeh lechem Kol Melechet Avodah Lo Ta'asu. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochet Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yashikah. Inclusive blessing for all who read.
Misha Berach Abatinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah, v'yivarech et kol ha'krurim asher alu hayom lichvod ha'makom, lichvod ha'torah v'lichvod ha'shabbat.
Lichvod ha'regel.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu yivarech otam v'yet mishmechotam, v'yishlach baracha v'hatzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedeihem, in kol Yisrael achechem, v'namar Amen.
Now, for those who are ill, we're thinking especially today of Scott Lawrence, Dalia Bat Razel, Barbara Rose, Lou Burl, Ilya Olton, Karina Golabat Hanavi Yehuda Tzvi, Yehudi Bat Shena, Shabtai Dil Ben Shimon Moshe, Ray Rancha, Rosie Gurman, Nikhil Ben Eliza, Shulamit Bat Leah, Miriam Bat Yehudi, Del Mendelson, Marina Gottschalk, David Gubman, Eliza Bat Rav Raphael Ben Esther, Moshe Ben Ruvain, Mordechai Moshe Ben Bear, Naomi Sofer, Esther Rivka Bat Rachel, Moshe Ben Pedro Shena, Sun Yong Kim, Patricia de la Puenta Rose, Eitan Ben Sarah, Asa Arnon Ben Sarah, Sarah Vega Bat Sima Miriam, Evan Von Kugelgen, Joe Von Kugelgen, Diana Parker, and Rachel Shulamit Bat Yehudit. If you have any other names of those who are ill, you want to just say their names to add to our prayers this morning, please do so at this time. Yishabeach
Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah Uyivarech B'Rabeh Elohim Elna Refana Elna Refana
God bless and heal all those who are ill, and may we continue to be with them in their time of need. We rise once again for Hadva and Galila.
Ya'amar hamakia ta'amar hagalel golel. Ya'amar hagalel.
All right, we have 3 generations of this family here today. The grandfather visiting from New York.
Bezat Torah Asher Samoshe B'Nei Yisrael B'Yad Adonai B'Yad Moshe
Ilu natan lanu et haTorah natan lanu et haTorah dayenu 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 Ilu natan lanu et haShabbat natan lanu et haShabbat dayenu We may be seated. We turn to page 1300, 1300 for the Haftarah, which comes from Joshua. And they're celebrating their first Pesach in the land. They're not fully settled yet, of course. And to purify and prepare themselves, they undergo a mass communal circumcision. The other thing that makes this Haftarah very interesting is at the end, Joshua encounters near Jericho this angel, captain of the Lord's host, of God's army, and tells him to remove the sandals from his feet, which is very much a parallel to Moshe as well. In fact, the entire book of Joshua parallels Moses' story in the most interesting, fascinating of ways. If you read it straight through instead of, Haftarah by Haftarah, you'll see the parallels are really quite incredible. Anyway, that's our Haftarah. It ranks, it's a four-star Haftarah. You might say, well, why not 5? It's really good because you can't give all the good ones 5, otherwise it's not, I grade on the curve to some extent. Anyway, no Haftarah grade inflation here. Page 1300.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'chad v'nevi'im tovim v'ratzah b'divrachem ha'nemarim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah v'Moshe abdo Yisrael amo nevi'ei ha'emet v'tzedek. Vayomer Yehoshua el ha'am hikadashu ki machar yaseh Adonai b'kol bechem niflaot. Vayomer Yehoshua el hakohanim lemor Sahu et Aaron habrid ve'ifru lifnei ha'am
וייסעו את ארון הברית וילכו לפני העם. ויאמר אדוני אל יהושע היום הזה החל גדלך בעיני כל ישראל אשר ידעון כי כאשר הייתי עם משה אחיה עמך ועת ההיא אמר אדוני אל יהושע עשה לך חרבות צורים ושוב מול את בני ישראל שנית ויעשו לו יהושע חרבות צורים וימול את בני ישראל אל גבעת הערלות וזה הדבר אשר אמר יהושע העם היוצא מצרים הזכרים כל אנשי המלחמה מתו במדבר בדרך בצאתם ממצרים כי מולים היו כל העם היוצאים וכל העם היהודים במדבר בדרך בצאתם ממצרים לא מלאו כי 40 שנה הלכו בני ישראל במדבר עד תם הגוי אנשי המלחמה היוצאים ממצרים אשר לא שמעו בקול אדוני אשר נשבע אדוני לכם בבלתי הראתם את הארץ אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותם לתת לנו ארץ זבת חלב ודבש את בניהם הקים תחתם אותם יהושע כי ערלים היו כי לא מלאו אותם בדרך ויהי כאשר תמו כל הגוי להימול וישבו תחתם במחנה עד חייתם ויאמר אדוני אל יהושע היום גלותי את חרפת מצרים מעליכם ויקרא שם המקום ההוא גלגל עד היום הזה ויחנו בני ישראל בגלגל ויעשו את הפסח ב14 יום לחודש בערב ערבות יריחו ויאכלו בעבור הארץ במחרת הפסח מצות וכלו בעצם היום הזה וישבות המן במחרת האוכלם בערב הארץ ולא היה עוד לבני ישראל מן ויאכלו בתבואת ארץ כנען בשנה ההיא ויהי וחיות יהושע ביריחו וישא עיניו וירא והנה איש עומד לנגדו חרבו שלופה בידו וילך יהושע אליו ויאמר לו הלנו אתה עם מצורנו ויאמר לו כי ונצבע אדוני אתה באתי ויפול יהושע אל פניו ארצה וישתחו ויאמר לו מה אדוני מדבר אל עבדו ויאמר Sar Tzava Adonai et Yehoshua shall nahalach me'al raglecha ki hamakom asher ata omed alav kodesh hu v'yas Yehoshua ken v'yarecho sogeret nesugeret Mipanei b'nei Yisrael v'ein yotzei v'ein ba v'yehi Adonai et Yehoshua v'yehi shamo l'chol ha'aretz Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam tzur kol ha'olamim tzaddik b'chol hadorot Ha'elchem eman v'omer v'yoseh ha'medaber makayem shechol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanin devarecha v'devarecha midevarecha achor lo yashuv rekam Ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah baruch atah Adonai ha'el ne'eman b'chol devarav Machem Ol Zion ki hi beit hayenu v'alevat nefesh toshia b'imchera b'yameinu baruch atah Adonai v'sameach Zion b'vanecha
Amen.
Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavid avdecha v'malchut beit David meshichecha b'imchera yavo v'yagel libeinu al kiso lo yesh ezar v'lo yanchalut acharim et kavodo כי בשם קודשך ונשבעת לו, שלא יכפה נרות לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן דוד. על התורה ועל העבודה והנביאים, על יום השבת הזה ועל יום חג המצות הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנחה, לששון ולשמחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים נעלה, מברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת וישראל והזמנים.
Yashua. Even got the Hag blessings in there. Thank you, David. Prayer for the state of Israel, which we're going to do in Hebrew on page 416. Binu Shabbat Shemayim, Tzor Yisrael B'Go'alo, Rek Minat Yisrael, Reshit Tzrikat Ulatenu, Magen Aleha Be'evrat Chasdecha, Ufros Aleha Suchat Shulmecha, Ushlach Orcha V'Yamitecha L'Rashea, Zorea V'Yonzeha, V'Taknem Be'etza Tova Milfanecha, Chazek Et Yidei Miknei Eretz Kodshenu, V'Hankilem Eloheinu Yeshua, V'Yater Nitzachon Teatrem, V'Natata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'Simchat Olam Ne'Veha, V'Nomar, Amen. Prayer for peace, we're going to do in English on page 417. We invite Stella Goodwin to come up and read that. And I forgot to bring the reading with me, but you have it. I emailed it to you yesterday, read it as part of our Seder. It's not really exactly a prayer for peace for Ukraine, but a thank you for our congregation on behalf of all your generosity for the student rabbi Tzipi Silberstein, who spoke to our community about 4 weeks ago. And we responded just incredibly beautifully with lots of generosity, lots of money to help directly Jews in Ukraine. Anyway, prayer for peace fully, come on up. 417.
A prayer for peace. May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world. For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you.
I will live the land of his peace, and shall not be ravaged by war.
Let love and justice flow like a mighty stream.
Let peace fill the earth, as waters fill the sea.
And let us say,
Amen.
Yasher Koach.
Page 420, Ashrei. This side of the room is going to start. This side of the room is going to respond. 1, 2, 3.
Ashrei Yoshevetecha, O Yahuwah,
Ashrei Am Shekachalo, Ashrei Am Shadonai Elohav. Lechoyo Mavarchecha, Vala Shimcha Leolam Vaed. Dorle Dori Shabbat Maasecha, Uburotecha Yagidu. Bezus Dorotecha Yomeru, Ublatecha Asafrena. Amin Berachim Adonai, Erech HaChaim Udo Chased. Yodu Adonai Kol Ma'asecha, Chasidecha Yivarchucha. Lo Dilipnei Adam Burotav, Vod Adar Malchuto. So Mechanai L'Chol HaNoflim, Zokef L'Chol HaKrufim. Poteach et Yadecha, Maspi L'Chol Chai Ratzon. L'Chol Korav, L'Chol HaKrufim, V'Emet. Shani Yashmi. We rise for the return of the Sifrei Torah to the Ark. Ark openers come up. We're going to have a couple different new Torah carriers. So Rafi, why don't you come up and carry the Torah? And saw someone else who I had, and now I forgot who that other person was going to be. So Joe, it's going to be you. Yalu et Shem Adonai, ki nizkaf shemo levato, ho'o ha'aretz v'shamayim, v'yorem keren yom, tehilah v'chasiyah, b'nei Yisrael ha'orev, hallelujah, Vaishaber Adonai Echazeh. Vakim Shemoed Yelavan V'Siriyot Yelov Ezreimim. Kol Adonai Kodesh Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh Kol Adonai Yechol Vayachasel Yarod Vechalo Kulo Merkavod.
Adonai Lamahu Yah, Shamayesh Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Yoseyam Oyitzin, Adonai Yevarech et Famo Bashalom.
Nasati lachem Torati al tazohu. Eis hayeli v'mahadi imah v'ezohem v'erushar terachem dar v'yoam v'chodirotem We may be seated. Closing our books for a few moments. It turns out that entire governments can be brought down because of a piece of matzah. Or a piece of chametz, anyway. I don't know how closely you've been following events in Israel, but one of the biggest ones, and probably not the one that got the most publicity unless you read the Jewish press in particular, is that one of the governing coalition has decided to leave the governing coalition in Israel, which has a majority of one, and because of chametz, because a hospital refuses to enforce that someone can go in, they're not going to check the bags of people for when they go into the hospital during Passover week to make sure there's no chametz in the bag. Really? All right, I know it's almost, it defies belief. In fact, there was a law, there was a Supreme Court case a couple years ago which says they don't have to check. But she wants to change this, and in fact, unless this rule is changed so that no chametz goes into the hospital during Passover week, because the hospital adheres to Orthodox kashrut standards, because of that, she's leaving the coalition, and that may bring down this government and bring forth new elections. Now, sounds ridiculous. It's because it's a pretext, right? I don't think it's really about the matzah, or the bread, the pita bread, I guess, would be the most likely culprit in the backpack of somebody who goes into the hospital. Not checking for weapons anymore, not guns, not knives, but a crumb of chametz, perhaps. But again, it's a pretext. If somebody is determined to destroy a government or doesn't like what's going on, they may use any excuse. And it's funny because it reminded me, or it's really not funny, but it reminded me of the way the actual second temple was said to have been destroyed in Jerusalem. It's a similar story of pettiness. And again, it's more a pretext than it is actually, the reason why Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. But if you don't know the story, a few of you do, it's a story about Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Right? There was a rabbi who had a best friend named Kamsa and a sworn enemy named Bar Kamsa. And he was having a banquet. It wasn't Passover, so chametz was not the issue. He was having a banquet. He meant to invite Kamsa, and accidentally he invited Bar Kamsa, his sworn enemy. And so Bar Kamsa shows up to the banquet, and I don't even know the name, if he is named, this rabbi who has the two friends, but sees him there, and he wants him kicked out immediately. And Bar Kamsa says, you know, I thought it was a little odd that I got the invitation from you, but I'm here. You already bought the meal. Don't embarrass me. I'll stay. I'll eat the meal. I'll leave quietly when it's done. And the man said, no, you must leave right away. They go back and forth for a short while, and eventually the man, this Bar Kamsa, is taken by the seat of his pants and lifted and thrown out of the room. And he vows to seek revenge. And so, and not just on this man, but on all the rabbis who didn't stick up for him, right, when he was thrown out and publicly embarrassed, which is also a violation of a mitzvah, the mitzvah not to shame someone, called lo busha. And so he says, I'm gonna get back at everybody. So in those days, sacrifices were offered at the ancient temple, and there was often a sacrifice offered on behalf of the Roman emperor for the safety, security, and success of the Roman emperor. And what Bar Kamsa does is he trafes the sacrifice that's about to be brought on behalf of the Roman Empire. By trafing it means like he cut it or something, there was a blemish in it which would make it not fit for sacrifice. So it comes up, it's supposed to be the sacrifice for the Roman Emperor, it's no longer kosher, they can't sacrifice it, the one on behalf of the Roman Emperor. And rumors start spreading. The Jews are no longer sacrificing on behalf of the Roman Emperor, what an insult! And the Roman Emperor hears of it and gets angry, and on account of that, destroys Jerusalem and is determined to take the rabbis out of power, and that's what happens. Now, first of all, is it a real story? Well, it's a real story, but is it just a story? Probably. Would it have been the event that precipitated the crisis? Even possible, but it doesn't matter. It's just a pretext, right? The anger, the internal rot, actually, what we call sinat chinam, the senseless and ceaseless internal hatred among the Jewish people is what got the temple destroyed, not that particular incident. If it wasn't that, it would have been another one. Now, that sacrifice story, in turn, reminded me of something else that's happening, is there are a few radical right-wing folks in Israel who are said to be trying to prepare a sacrifice on the Temple Mount, where the Al-Aqsa Mosque stands, which is completely against Jewish law and Israeli law. Okay? You can't offer a sacrifice while the temple is not in operation. I mean, the ancient Beit HaMikdash, right? It has to be in operation before you offer the sacrifice. No rabbi in Israel, or at least not just mainstream, no even normal crazy right-wing person, a rabbi would say that you can offer a sacrifice. If you could probably find some weird rabbi that says it somewhere, right? Because that's just the way life works. But the chief rabbinate is against it. Really, even the most extremist rabbis say you cannot do this. And yet, that's another pretext, which perhaps is one of the things leading to rioting right now in Jerusalem. So we go from, destroying the government because of a piece of chametz to what happened in the ancient temple, an insult and a trade sacrifice, to now the possibility of a sacrifice, which will not possibly happen anyway, leading to rioting. And the fact is, all those things, they're very real and they're not real at all. Okay, they're all pretext. Right? The tragedies, the difficulties, the struggles, the pains, they're going to happen regardless. Two questions kind of come up for me as it relates to that. One is, which is more dangerous? Internal strife or external strife? Rotting from within, or the kind of crash and burn, external enemies that, which one is more dangerous to a person? Now, I'm going to tell a story which may have not relate to this at all, but in my mind, everything is relating to this right now. But so last night, we were determined to have our Passover Seder outside, but we have no we don't really have lights outside in our backyard. And by the way, we're going to have Kiddush lunch outside after all today. It's nice enough. But anyway, so we're determined to have outside. We don't have lights, so we took a lamp from our upstairs bedroom. It was kind of an old halogen lamp. The bulb is like fading out and maybe, maybe done. But as I started to lift it, it's on a base of like, I don't know what you call it, cement. And somehow the cement like fell apart in the bedroom. And it was the weirdest thing. The light had rotted from within. And to me, of course, it's a metaphor now for the things that I'm talking about today. Just the base, not the whole light. But then we bring the light out, and a kid may have ran into the light, and it fell, and the bulb crashed and burned. And that was it for the light. So it had already rotted from within, and externally, it was now crashed and broken, right? The ridiculous point that I'm making from this, because everything, once you're thinking of something, everything kind of, you see everything in that lens, is that they're both a danger, right? Internal rot and external enemies. They're both things to be concerned about. The other thing is, and this is a much more personal and deeper message, has nothing to do with the politics of Israel or sacrifices or Kamza and Bar Kamza or Hametz, is as an individual, when you think you've done something wrong, or perhaps you think someone else has done something wrong and you're beating yourself up or beating them up over the little thing, you wish you could have said something differently. If you hadn't said that, the explosion wouldn't have happened, the temper tantrum wouldn't happen, your child wouldn't have been messed up, yourself wouldn't have been messed up, you wouldn't have lost the job, right? It's not your fault. It's not that one thing you said. It's not that little thing that you think you did or didn't do. It's all pretext, right? Okay, don't beat yourself up too much. These are just little tiny things. Okay? It may be a straw that you think breaks the camel's back, but there's another straw waiting for it, and it's going to come the next day. So be forgiving for yourself. And then to take it back to the macro and Israeli government, this is my personal view, be forgiving of them too. All right? To try to cobble together a coalition which has both the extreme left and the extreme right on it, just to make a change so you wouldn't have as much internal corruption as they had, it's tough, right? And if they had ruled differently on Hametz or done this different meeting, it would have made a difference. It wouldn't have, right? These things are all pretext. So forgive our brothers and sisters in Israel. Forgive yourselves. Forgive each other for things that may seem large at the time, but they're just pretext. They're just little things. There's nothing you could have done. All we really ask is that you, as we ask of ourselves and our children, is that you do your best. That's it. Chag Sameach. Shabbat Shalom. And if I mess up your name and call you Kamza Bar Kamza, I'm getting older, okay? All right. We are going to continue now with Musaf. Might have been too short for the Kiddush lunch people, but we go on anyway. Please rise. We are on page 428, and then we're going to go right to 456. Musaf Amidah for festivals with Shabbat and Pesach insertions. Yikra v'yikra shemei Rabbah Yamad yikra chirutei v'amlich malchutei v'chayech U'mechan u'chayei dechol beit Yisrael V'agala u'mizman karim imeru Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach Le'olam le'almei almaya yibarach. Yibarach v'shtabach v'parim v'naseh v'tadar v'taleh v'talal shmei kudsha. Le'la min kol bechata v'shirata tushbecha tamenechem atadamiran v'yalma imeru. Amen. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi akita ilatecha baruch atah Adonai. Next one. Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Agado, Agibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zoper Chasdei Avo, Umevi Goel Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo Yahva, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagin. Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, Ufrokei Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayim Eitim Atara Le'Hoshia, Haruach Umarid Hashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayim Eitim Berachamim Rabim. So mechnoflim verofech olim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato, lishenei afar, michamo chabal yivuro, umito melach, melech mimi, umekayem. Umat mi'at Yeshua, v'neman atat yot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei ha'meitim. Na'aritzecha v'na'akdishecha, kesod siach zarfei kodesh, amakti shimcha ba'kodesh, kakatuv al yad nevi'echa, v'karazeh el zeh ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech haaretz, Kevodo, Kodo Malei Olam, Meshartav Sholim Zeh Zeh, Ai Mekom Kevodo, Liumatom Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Mim Kobo, Hu Yifen Berachamim, Am Yom Achadim Shemo, Erev Avoker, Beho Yom Tamid, Pamayim Be'ava, Shema Omrim, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad Hu, Eloheinu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Moshienu, Vehu Yashmienu Barachama, Sheni Liene Kochai, Sheni Liene Kochai, Liot Lachem Elohim. Adir Adirenu Adonai Adonai Adir Shimcha B'Kol Haaretz, V'Adonai L'Melech Kol Haaretz, V'Yom Ha'u Adonai Echad, U'Shema Echad, U'Direi Kotecha Katuv Le'mor. Ador Nagid Kod Lecha, let's skin Kiddush Naki, Shachalen, Shalom Ba'ed, Malkav Kadosh, Ata, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Now, as was pointed out to me while I was davening, so don't go to the silent prayer. I forgot, or Tal, the prayer for dew, because in my head, for some reason, we do it on the 8th day of Passover, but no, that's on Sukkot. You do it on Shmini Atzeret, we do the prayer for rain. So we're going to do prayer for Tal now, slightly out of order. I'm not, there probably is a halakha. I don't know it for what you do when you accidentally missed it, but I'm deciding we're going to do it now. As much as I kind of don't want to, because we should always pray for rain in California, but this is what our ancestors prescribed. So we're going to stay standing. We're going to go to page 478. And Joe and Sheila, will you go back up to the ark and open it? But we're going to start after the first paragraph, because we've already done that part. And if if this is the little pretext that you use to quit the synagogue, I feel sorry for you. Just come around. But yeah, it's important to do this prayer. And it's beautiful as well. Eloheinu v'Elokeinu, ten nitzot artsach, shitenu bracha v'titzach, rov dagan v'tirosh v'chafritzach, komehir b'cheftzach v'tzach, tzavei shana tova u'uteret, frihad aretz v'gapon u'tiferet, yir hasuka noteret, sima be'adcha ateret, v'tam, tal nofech alei eretz v'rucha, mi meged shamayim sabeinu v'racha, v'ayir mitocha shecha, kana acharecha mishuva v'tam, tal yasit sufarim teim b'modecha muvcharim, hanunecha chaletz mibas terim, zimra naniim v'kol narim v'tam, al v'sacha malei asameinu, hacha et techadesh yameinu, dor ke'erkecha ha'amein shemenu, gan ravet simeinu v'tal. Although tevrek mazon v'mashmanenu al yihirazon, ayuma asher kisata katzon anata fekla ratzon v'tal. Shetach Adonai Eloheinu mashif haruach u'marihatam, libracha v'lo liklala, l'chaim v'lo l'mavet, l'sova v'lo l'razon. The ark is closed, and we're going to continue silently with the repetition of our Amidah on page 462. Page 506 of reciting the Kiddush Shalem. Geravi Krash Me Rabba, Gamani Rachir Tevim Lichmachim Tevachechon, Gimacham Chol Beit Yisrael, Bagalav Izman Karivim Meru, Yesh Me Rabba Bevora, Leolam Yal Me Almaya Yitvar. Barak Vishtavat, Garden Ram Nesev, Yitadavi Televi Tal Shmei Kucha, Elami Kuberchata Vishiratat, Chatavarech Tam Ram Yama Vimeru, Tikot Soton Voton Choyshel, Koram Novon Vishmai Vimeru, Yishabram Min Shemai, Novel Koyshel Vimeru, Hosei Shalom Bimama, Uyase Shalom, Linovel Ko Yisrael, Vel Koysh Vetevel, Vimeru. All right, kids, come on out. Please rise for the Aleinu. She'unote shamayim ve'yoset haaretz u'Moshe v'yikaro ha'shamayim mima'al u'shvi natuzo begope miromim u'Eloheinu egon emet malkeinu efes ulato yedata yom ve'ashivota El levanecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim v'shamayim ima'al Eino B'tor techadonayim loch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai v'melech ad kol ha'aretz v'yomahu May be seated as we lovingly recall the memory of our departed relatives and friends whose work sites we observe during the coming week, thinking especially today of Bessie Altman, Sidney Ehrenbart, Henrik Ballant, Albert Louis Block, Pavel Blumenkrantz, Raymond Bolton, past president, Renee Davis, Jerome Desser, Richard Frankel, Charles Friedman, Rose Gelfand, Edward Bernard Glick, Murray Goldstein, Richard Gray, Herbert Roginski, Abraham Hoffman, Sidney Shepsel Kahane, Stephen Lazar, Gussie Leeson, Albert Levine, Howard McAfee, Michael Nicholas Miller, Avram Raskin, Eve Reingold, Sophelina Reingold, Marilyn Reinman, Solomon Sadian, Samuel Schechtman, Therese Schwartz, Annie Silver, Rebecca Tobias, Francis Weiner, Jacob Weinstein, Bertie Weisbrod, Joseph David Weiss, Nathan Weissman, Augusta Wolfs, Jacob Zilverberg. We're in the Shloshim for Kurt Kleinman, Ariel David, Kevin Romero, and Janet Gordon, who's the mother of Kathy Bird, who just died this week. We're in the Shiva for, well, actually, we're not quite in the Shiva for her. The funeral is Monday. Yeah, Rachel Brody is a major teacher in the East Bay Jewish community, in the Bay Area Jewish community. She also passed away this week. Very impactful on many people. So thank you, and we ask all those who are in mourning or observing Yortzeit, as well as anyone else who would choose to do so, to rise for the mourner's Kaddish at this time. It is on page 512. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad yivrach hirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'yedechon beit Yisrael, v'galav v'zman kariv v'yibru, Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam lo me'o mayam, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, shmei kudsha v'richu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran v'alma v'imru, Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom v'brama, Huya say shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Pranam libracha, in the memory of people you come to say God for yourself always. And let us say, Amen. Amen. So, well, Dave, I would call David up for the announcements, but since I want to thank him first, so I don't want him to have to thank himself. So first of all, thank you, as David and Stella Gubin are sponsoring the Kiddush lunch, which is really good. Very Middle Eastern flair, as Eliza Somach-Gorevsky is the caterer. So please stay for lunch. And they're sponsoring, like I said, David and Stella are sponsoring the Kiddush. We also want to thank David for reading Haftorah and Torah. We also want to thank Ann Levine, Susan Simon, and Laura Gabrielle for reading Torah as well. There's not much in the way of announcements, though. Basically, everything's closed this week. I will be in the office should anybody need me. And next, there are services there's Minyan on Monday and Thursday at 8, and there are services on Friday night and Saturday morning. Saturday morning next week will include a Yizkor service as well. It will not include the prayer for dew at all, because eventually we got to it today. Thank you for your understanding. Sometimes happens, and so, do you recommend shouting out something in the middle of services? And the answer is most of the time, yes, but you have to know that what you're saying is appropriate, and it isn't always. And I'm talking about even religious things, although that history is less than it used to be. Anyway, we had someone who would often correct during the middle of services, and sometimes the corrections were wrong, so it was kind of hard to. Yeah, exactly. So it was hard to know, but thank you for those who pointed out that I had skipped tall. David, anything else to cover? Well, we're not having second day services or seventh day on Friday because we just don't have the personnel. We don't have the Torah readings and etc. They are happening at Beth Jacob and Beth Israel, and you are welcome to attend there. Sinai also has seventh day, I presume anyway, on Friday because they don't celebrate an eighth day, as the Reform movement and Israeli do not celebrate an eighth day of Passover. There are a few conservative congregations that have moved to the one-day holiday instead of two. Not many, but a few. There's one in Philadelphia for sure. But anyway, shy chairs. All right, I think that's it. Adon Olam, page 514. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nira Le'eh Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Yachare Kiklot HaKol Livado Yimlok Nara Vehu Haya Vehu Ope Vehu Yeh V'tifara Hu Echad V'Ein Sheni Lam Shilo L'Hach B'Ra V'Li Reishi V'Li Tachli Lo Ha'oz V'Ha'Misra Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nira Le'eh Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Vehu Eli V'chai Goali V'tzorchev Li V'Eitzara Vehu Nisi Umanos Li V'Nakos Li V'Yom Ekra Ve'yato Afki Ruchi Ve'Etishan Ve'Ya'ira Ve'imruchi Gaviati Adonai Li V'Lo Ira Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nira Le'eh Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra. And we now rise for the Kiddush and Motzi. And when you're done, take your books to the back instead of leaving them in the pews. Page 746, if you want to try to follow this. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorot ha'berith olam. V'nei Yisrael oti le'olam oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorot ha'berith olam. V'sheshni v'masar l'ayim ha'shamayim ve'et ha'aret v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorot ha'berith olam. V'yom hashvi Shabbat v'nafah Shabbat v'yinafash v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorot ha'berith olam. V'yidaber Moshe et Modeh Adonai el b'nei Yisrael K'brach Adonai Yom HaShabbat Yikadshehu Sabri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei Peri HaGafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tei Avon, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.